And welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And tonight, it's time for
new comics, bitches!
So, welcome back to another edition. So it was the amazing Arizona Comic-Con this weekend, and sadly I didn't go because I, A, couldn't afford it, and B, couldn't get the time off work, or my wife couldn't get the time off work. But there was the heralded zombie walk that took place on Friday evening, which I was able to get to, and yes, I was dressed up as a zombie Jack Bauer. I don't have pictures, and I don't have video. Well, I have pictures, but I don't have video. And if you want them, you know, if you follow me on Twitter or Tumblr or Facebook, I'll put them up. So, but it was supposed to be ran by Mr. Robert Kirkman. It was supposed to be in attendance, but I know not of his attendance because he was there at the con this weekend, so. A little disappointing all in all, but anyway, let's get to actual comics for right now, okay? So, alright, so Avengers Annual #1. Again, I got my notes here. Now this is continuing the severe ass-kicking that the New Avengers got in their annual. That was by the same creative team that was done by Bendis and Gabriel Dell'Otto, who also did Secret War, that kicked off Civil War. That sort of kicked off Civil War. This is a segue into Civil War, kind of. And basically what we had there was Simon Williams and a bunch of other nut jobs, with a few exceptions, kind of gathered together their own, not Masters of Evil, but their own kind of anti-Avengers team, and said, you know, you people are not good for the world, you people have too much power and not enough responsibility, and, you know, or you're not using it responsibly, is I guess, was their point. And so they beat the living hell out of the New Avengers. So in this, we have the entire roster coming together. We've got the Secret Avengers, we've got the Avengers, and we've got the New Avengers. There's a lot of double duty being played on these teams, and that also is going to shift once Remender takes over Secret Avengers. We're going to have a new lineup there. But for right now, basically what I got out of this issue is that it's continuing, or maybe it began. See, this is where it becomes unclear, because a lot of the, you know, in the Avengers right now and in the New Avengers, you've got a lot of anti-Avengers protesters. Now, I don't know if that was maybe just like a little bit of a, you know, a pointed thing to, you know, a more pointed idea of kind of like the Occupy Wall Street movement, that, you know, these are people who want the Avengers to be accountable to whatever, and not to just themselves. And this book just basically kind of continues that. So I don't know if this was actually the progenitor of that, getting that message out there that the Avengers are too powerful and dangerous to, and they're just not held accountable to the same standards as law enforcement or government would be, and that they're actually causing more harm than good. And also, by that same token, you've got these people trying to bring them down, try to expose them to the media. It's basically the same thing we've been seeing in other Avengers titles. But here it seems to be a lot more pointed. That's basically Simon Williams' main thing that's going on here. You know, there's some clever stuff going on here. You know, instead of fighting them in front of the cameras, they teleport them to City Field, and the Avengers beat the living crap out of everybody there, and they and they absorb Wonder Man's, whole ionic energy, and they contain it. And there's this discussion between Simon and Hank McCoy at the end, which is where Simon is saying, look, these people that you're working with, they've done good things, and for the most part they're good people, but if they start to get out of line, you have to stop them, is what he says to Hank. And Hank just doesn't really know what to make of any of this or what to think about any of it. And Simon also says that he was kind of brought back to life by the Scarlet Witch, and part of that is why he's so against what's going on. So, again, there's some interesting ideas. I just don't think the execution was there. And Gabriel Delato's art here is a really pale comparison to his full painted work. It's kind of like seeing Alex Ross's pencil and ink work. It's okay, but it's nowhere near as stellar as his painted stuff, and that's where it gets kind of disappointing. God damn it. Anyway, so that's a 3 out of 5. I just didn't really, it's just, it felt like I've read this before, and I've read it often. So, moving on. So The Boys, number 62. So we've got a lot going on around here. The Boys basically put Paralactic to sleep, as one would do with an ailing pet. And we have CIA Director Rayner. She's basically being micromanaged by this new administration under Vic the Veep, and his, he's basically a lackey of Vought American. And Huey confesses the molestation that he suffered at the hand or the thumb of Black Noir back during Herogasm. And in turn gets a special gift from Billy. And the Boys, basically, they're ready to bring the fight to Vought American, but also at the same time, Homelander is ready to make his move, whatever that move is. It seems to be something biblical going on here. It's reaching that boiling point. I'm not sure if this is... See, this is it's obviously a comic book that I follow and I like a lot, but I don't follow it enough maybe to understand what Garth Ennis is doing here as far as with this series, if he's actually setting it up for an ending soon. I mean, if that's the case, then that's fine. This, it's been a long series. It's been like 62 issues so far. Along with 2 miniseries that with Highland Laddie and of course most recently with Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker. There's some really good, some fun stuff going on here. But it is getting to a more serious and more violent head. I think the kind of gift wrap A-Train to kind of get Huey back into the physical confrontation mode, that's something that I think this book also needs, because Huey obviously has always been our voice inside the he's always been the audience's voice inside the Boys, and to see him dole out some punishment might very well suit this particular this particular series, or it might not. We don't know how it's going to turn out, and that's what's exciting about this comic. So that I'm never really sure where the hell this is going to go, and that's what makes it fun. So the one complaint I have with this issue is the art. Russ Braun, who's been an on and off artist throughout the series run, his stuff is always kind of just meh, as opposed to Derek Robertson's stuff, which is always good. But I'm glad that Russ Braun is working on this, and Derek Robertson took the time to do Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker, because the work in that series as a whole has been much more has been much more concise and been a lot better overall. It's a much more important story, I think, to tell than necessarily what's going on here. Which is not to say that this isn't important. It's just it doesn't have the same emotional impact, which is where Derek Robertson, where his work really is needed. So I give this a 4 out of 5. Again, this is some really good stuff. There's some really good stuff that came out this week, and we're going to get to a lot of it. So we have The Huntress, number 4 of 6. This book is... Honestly, I'm taking it out of my pull list. This was a 2 out of 5 at best. This has been a very, I enjoyed the first issue. I really didn't like the second issue. I enjoyed the third issue. I really didn't like this issue. It's dull espionage and safe danger. That's basically what I like to call it, is that there's a lot of intrigue here, but all of it's really boring. And the action sequences, there's no sense of real danger at all, with the exception of what we got in the previous issue. I never feel like Helena's really in a situation where, okay, well, she might have a really hard time fighting her way out of this. But no, I mean, she's going up against, just these grade Z hoodlums, and then going up against their kind of, their mastermind in this particular issue, one of them, and there's, and so, and again, another problem with this book is that sometimes it reads more like a travelogue and like a restaurant guide than it does a fucking comic book. Because they're always talking about the food, and they're always talking about, how beautiful everything is in Italy and in the Mediterranean, and, it's just a lot of scenery and a lot of stuff, and it's like, this is really interesting if I was reading a travelogue, or if I was reading a restaurant guide, but I'm not. I'm reading a comic book. I expect to be... I'm not being educated in any way. You're telling me about, if she ate this stuff all day, she'd be really fat. That's just the kind... that seems like Sex in the City shit to me. It's like... That's what kind of bugs me about this book, is that I think that Paul Levitz, who's writing it, he's trying to make it too feminine when he obviously doesn't have a feminine voice. And that is, I think, a problem when male writers do a lot of female characters. When they're at least running them, anyway. I don't think female writers, they have as hard of a time stepping into men's heads as men do women's heads. And that is another fault of this book. I think that it's having a hard time trying to reconcile that this is, this is essentially, it's an action book, but told, this is, it's not just for women, certainly, but it's from the point of view of a woman. This is a woman superhero that we're dealing with. So, Brian Azzarello doesn't have that problem. A lot of other writers that are more talented don't have that problem. But Paul Levitz, ultimately, he's just not that talented of a writer, I don't think. So I think that's a big part of it. So, and in this issue, there's kind of a moral corner that, or a moral road that diverts into a wood, and, Helena seems to take the path less chosen by her fellow heroic compatriots, but... but not in an overt way. And I think that would have made this more interesting. Give us someone, let's give this an impetus of something actually like, okay, this is a hard decision for her to make. Does she kill this guy? Does she tie him up and bring him to the authorities? Whatever. Give us something. The only thing that has any remarkability at all in this issue is the art by Marcus Toe, and it's the only highlight. The art's very good, but everything else is just, it's very blah, very boring, very dull, and it's being axed. So, stay tuned. We've got a lot more really good comics to talk about, and some other not so good ones. So, stay tuned. We'll be back. We've got a lot of ground to cover.